I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Finance Committee on August 20th, 2024 at 4:44 p.m. Roll call, Alder Galvin.
Here.
Alder Johnson.
Here.
Alder Kingfist.
Here.
And I'm present. Entertain a motion to approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the minutes.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to regular business. Number one, consideration with possible action to approve the purchase of parcels 11-210, 435 East Walnut, 11-206, 512 Cherry Street, 11-222, 503 East Walnut Street, and 13-128, 212 South Madison Street for $3.6 million, comprised of $600,000 Whitney TID 20, $300,000 unspent bonding, and $2.7 million general fund balance, and options to purchase for $1, subject to obtaining approval of development agreements for parcels 15-169, 501 South Washington Street, 3-876-1, 885 Shawano Avenue, and 6-475, 1634 6th Street, option approved by RDA on August 15th, 2024. Any discussion, questions for staff?
I think I pretty much got all the information I needed 15 minutes ago.
I would just, again, reiterate, because ad hoc is not a binding committee, right? It doesn't necessarily make the recommendation straight to council, it comes through here first. So I would actually, I'd be willing to make a motion, we can open it for discussion after, maybe, if that makes sense. But I would make a motion to approve and direct staff that when the development agreements come before, that we strengthen the language around a clawback provision if the property is not developed, and that we prioritize historic preservation in stations 1 and stations 3. And that the city basically has the ability to have some level of oversight on that.
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Or, oh, I'm sorry, discussion, sorry.
In listening to the dialogue that just occurred, and also that is a beautiful historic building. So Brian, I'm glad to hear you want it historically modified.
Is that in
Is that-
harmony? Historically modified?
Well,
I'm teasing.
historically accurate or whatever. That building has sat vacant for a long, long time. And my father-in-law and Jim Sicko, they redid the Carnegie Library many, many years ago, took it down to nothing, and then built it back up. And now the federal judges are housed there. So I just think in now and into the future, it could really be something special, a crown jewel in Green Bay.
And I apologize if I missed this, I came in late to ad hoc, but I know there's the addition. How old is the base of the building or the original structure?
1920, I think that's there.
Yeah, we didn't talk about
Oh,
that.
oh, sorry.
But I believe
You're right.
Trista Hobbs, is she here?
She's
Trista?
online, Trista.
Okay, I think she did the inspection on that, right? City engineer?
Trista, do you know the answer to that question, how old the building is? The Green Bay Press Gazette building?
This is when you find out who's paying attention in the classroom.
I believe that the building was built in 1920. I'm checking the date right now.
Okay, thank you.
But maybe Trista, to that point.
1924.
1924. Trista, could you just speak to, from an engineering perspective, structurally, how's the building? Did you catch that? Maybe it's a little sluggish, a little slow. Trista, can you hear
Can you
me?
guys hear me?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay. Sorry about that. We did two walkthroughs actually, once with our consultant, once with the consultant. Both times we kind of both agreed that structurally speaking, it is a very solid building. Barring doing demolition to look at it more closely, we really didn't have any structural concerns. Obviously the systems are dated, but structurally, it does appear to be very sound.
Okay, I just want to reassure, the public that if we're spending this money that, like you kind of talked about at the last committee meeting, that we're not putting ourselves in a bad position 20 years from now, so.
It's when buildings were built to last.
Yes, it's like
Alderek?
good bones.
So I just have a clarification, I want to make sure I understood that Alder Johnson, when he was talking about maintaining historical significance, was for the fire stations, correct?
It was for the fire stations. However, I think, this building actually is in a historic district, so it would be subject to landmarks oversight, meaning the Press Gazette building.
Yeah.
So that's already kind of built in. Whereas stations 1 and 3 are not in historic districts, to my knowledge. So you kind of lack that, which is why I want to put that provision in the motion.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we were clarifying that, because I think it sounded like Alder Hinkvis was referring to the Press Gazette. My understanding is the Press Gazette is on the
Yeah, it's in the
historic
historical.
registry, so
Yep,
that would already be required.
yep. Yeah, what I didn't want to see, right, is with stations 1 and 3, those both are also very beautiful historic buildings. And if we can preserve them, I think that's what we should prioritize. And that's why I say if the city's got oversight, right, to do that would be my preference in an ultimate development agreement that would come on both of those properties. So essentially, if they come back and do an analysis and say, no, these can't be salvaged, that we at least have the ability to, they've got to grant that permission from us.
And I 100% agree with that.
Okay. Did I say grant that permission from us? Seek that permission from us. You know what I meant.
Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak? All right, well, motion. So yeah, we got a motion on the floor to approve.
Favor.
So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Number 2, consideration with possible action to approve the purchase of 57 surveillance cameras for the total cost of $89,031.66. This is to be funded through the 2020 and 2022 J grant and the 2024 equipment replacement budget for the City of Green Bay Police Department.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor say
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Number 3, consideration with possible action to request by the Department of Public Works to purchase mobile vehicle barricade systems for the advanced security technologies at a cost not to exceed $370,000. Any questions?
Motion approved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Number 4, consideration with possible action to action the report regarding the natural gas contract before the current contract had expired and after contract activation. Any questions?
It's going down.
Okay, entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Number 5, consideration with possible action to accept the Assistant for Firefighters Program and FEMA grant award of $687,181.81 and local match requirement of $68,718.19 for a total grant request of $755,900. Questions, discussion?
Motion approved.
Congratulations. Who's matching the 68? That's the only thing I couldn't figure out.
And that would be out of a regular operating budget. So those are costs we normally, like last year, for example, we wanted to send 4 people to class. We had to cut that back. This allows us to continue with
Okay,
that.
okay.
So it's just our regular budget would be able to fund this
Okay.
match. So very, very large number, and we're very excited about
Awesome.
it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Perfect. Did I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Did we have a second?
Yep.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Number 6, consideration with possible action to amend the citywide policy for grant applications that every when eligible grant written includes grant dollars to recoup administrative expenses while administering the grant. Sorry, that's a lot. Any discussion or questions on this?
I think you're just looking for a referral?
Yes, I apologize. When it was put on here, it should have said that it was a communication from Alder Hinkvis and Alder Grant. And I think at this point, I maybe wanted some discussion here and see if anything, refer it back to staff so that we can draft up a language.
Right, and this came up, Brian, we were,
This last committee.
last committee meeting, And we were talking about the grants that were coming in and so on and so forth. And it came to our attention that there are times we don't always apply for the administrative expenses that the grant may allow, because we want to use the grant for everything else and we use current staff. And it would seem to me that it would make sense because every grant is different. Every grant requires different reporting. It's on a different schedule, that anytime that we can apply for the administrative portion, we should.
And that it's not always happening.
Yeah,
When
and
it's
it's not always
allowed.
happening right now. So,
I mean, the only,
That's-
I'm trying to understand like advantages, disadvantages, right? In my mind, I'm thinking about like, okay, so you might recruit the money, but does it really have, like now you require yourself to do it every single time, which then, if you're taking the administrative, it pulls away from the program. And then some, you know, and of course I go even further down the rabbit hole, which is impact on things like expenditure restraint. So, I just want to understand, right? Sometimes there's trickle-down things that we don't always, that aren't always transparent, right? And I just kind of want to understand that piece, so maybe I would,
I was gonna say, I
Yeah,
know we kind of talked about
I was, one other comment, I did reach out to the senior staff, and we were gonna pull the information together so that, you know, give us a chance for staff to talk about it. I did get feedback from one of our assistant directors, and just said that sometimes that creates a competitive disadvantage if you are going to put less toward a program and you're going to use more for administration. So that was a comment that I had heard.
and I think our point, the point that we're making is if the grant says you can, X amount of dollars are allowed for administration, where it says it right in the grant, because there are some out there that do, then we should be using it for that. If we don't need all of it, but we should be recouping the reporting and administration of grants isn't easy. And we went from what, 4 million to 16 or 20 million now?
Yep, over the last couple of years, correct.
And all the reporting is different, the follow-up's different, the timing's different. So,
Our deputy director would like to speak to this.
Yeah, just briefly. While you can sometimes, and like you mentioned, every grant is different. You can sometimes include admin dollars in your budget, but it could, while it's eligible, it might hurt your competitiveness. If you're a granting agency, typically you prefer to see those dollars go towards the project or the program. And so you can have a more competitive application if you just put all the grant dollars towards that. Also, we could sometimes have a more competitive application if we contribute, you know, our in-kind cost, our staff time towards the administration of those grants. It actually helps our ability to secure grants. So it's just something to consider. If we were to refer this back to staff, we could put together a more formal proposal as to why we would be making these recommendations.
and what's interesting is through the RDA, when we do these grants, we have an area on there where a certain percentage is gone for admin costs for those.
Yeah, our HUD dollars, CDBG dollars, we are able to, I can't remember the percentage, 20% towards admin.
That doesn't affect, though, those are entitlement grants that come to us, so we just get them automatically and we're allowed to draw that admin. We always try to take advantage of admin whenever we can. We know that that's a value to the city, but there are some grants specifically that we know internally we may not get. We may lose out on the competitiveness of it. So I think maybe we were just looking at an option that would give us a little bit of flexibility, like if we know with this grant, like they're gonna throw us out if there's admin in it, maybe not this one, but all the other ones, right?
Well, and I think if it's, you know, you can, you know, there are the one-offs, the
Yeah.
situations that don't fall within the norm, and those should be addressed, but, and, you know, Diane will know that, so.
Well, and I think that's why we kind of worded it, well, and maybe we can tweak that, but when we said when eligible, we don't ever want
Yes.
to lose grants, but.
Right,
and I
so
don't
we
know,
don't want to lose them.
Director Ellenbecker, you can kind of speak to from a budget standpoint, is there an advantage to doing this when it comes to budgets?
Sure, and again, that's something we had a discussion after last meeting. As we've obtained so many more grants in the last couple of years, it's just taken up more administrative time. And in some cases, it allowed us to hire an additional person or additional, you know, potentially bodies to help administer the grants. So we were very fortunate for the ARPA grant, we were able to use administrative dollars to have an additional person to help manage the grant. So I think there is some benefit to it, and it certainly, especially if it's going to take up a lot more staff time to be able, when eligible, or, you know, if.
When beneficial.
When it
Yeah.
benefits, or I think, Mayor, where did you use?
It's practicable.
Where it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's always gonna be times that it doesn't.
So.
But, because and within the audit, I think we had some information on that also regarding grants.
Correct, there was a few, 10 years back, we had $2 million of grants, and now we're up to, was it 16 million? And so, you know, the tracking and the administrative side of grants is just very time consuming.
So would you guys, ladies, be comfortable with, you know, I'm thinking, I'm always a little hesitant to handcuff staff, right? Because
Oh,
grants
makes
are
total sense.
very
Oh, yeah.
deadline driven, right? So maybe if we look at the grant language and maybe add some language that says like, to the extent possible, administrative costs should be recuperated within a grant award.
Yeah, and I'm comfortable even allowing staff
Yes.
to see the positives and the negatives, because maybe we can then word it in a way that it makes sense for everybody.
And I'm even thinking
Yes.
like if we have it where it's in the grant award versus in the grant application, right? Because then because I would imagine we're always going to apply for the maximum that we can, right? But then the grant award is typically what will guide. So that way we're taking it on the back end instead of forcing it on the front end. Does that make sense?
Sure.
At
You're
this
saying,
point, we're just-
you're saying, just let them decide based on the grant.
Well, I'm saying, rather than tying it to the application process, where then our staff runs into that problem of perhaps becoming less competitive, that if we put it, once a grant is awarded, that we recover as much administrative as we can, right? Because then we're not handcuffing them on the front.
I like that.
And then, and again, right now, if all we're looking for is referral, it gives
Yeah.
the staff a bit of
Yes.
time to think about the right wording to achieve what you'd like to achieve, but make sure our staff is not, hindered.
Right.
Yeah, we were just more looking at a budget
Yeah, makes sense.
standpoint. Alder Gavin, I'm sorry, did you have a question?
Yeah, several years ago, I recommended or asked for personnel to consider adding on a grant writer, or someone that it was their job to look for grants for the city, all departments. Every department has people that are writing grants. Some are good at it, some are not, some are good at it. Some when they're writing the grants aren't doing the jobs that they were hired to do. And so those jobs tend to get pushed off onto someone else, or they just don't get done that quickly. I'm wondering if, while we're looking into this, is this the time to start saying, how many millions did you say we're up to now?
For the end of 2023, we had $16 million.
$16 million. I mean, that's a lot of money. And is it worth it for us to start considering having a coordinator or someone that's going to be the main grant writer to make sure that we can get the most we can out of what's out there, and maybe find even more that we're not aware that's available, if that was their only job. That's my thoughts on this.
Well, I guess that'd be something we would seek guidance from staff
staff.
if that's practical. Is it, I mean, it sounds great, but when you have someone looking at all the grants for all different departments,
Well, if
you don't have a specialty, like
Yes,
when.
the specialty.
Right, but if your
Yeah.
specialty is looking for grants, and they
Do
can
you know the
tap staff
needs?
to help write them, but if we're looking to reimburse staff time, that's great, but we're still not getting our work done, because that staff's not doing that work, they're writing grants. If we had someone whose main job was to oversee that and make sure it gets done, and because of the amount of money that we're getting in grants and reimbursements, it could actually pay for that position. And then these other staff members within their individual departments can go about the jobs they were hired to do a lot more than what they're currently doing, because they're writing the grant, then they have to monitor it, then they have to fill out the forms that, the grant person who gave us the money wants to see the results and things like that. So now their time is tied up with that also, so I'm just.
If I could offer up as a suggestion, Alder Galvin, because I
Sure.
think that is still fundamentally different than what's being talked about here. What I would suggest is budget time's coming. Maybe have that conversation with the mayor, see if there's a place for it in the budget, if that makes sense.
It does, I mean, I don't want this to go overlooked, and then we do this, and we find out, oh, well, we could have hired a grant writer and, paid for the position and all this, and saved a lot of this that we're doing right now,
Well,
so.
the good news is the mayor's here today. so
Indeed he is.
Look at this. You
Oh,
guys are looking at each other, you're nodding, so, there you go.
Well, and I think,
No, I mean, this has come up in the past. Diana is probably a better place to talk about this, but, you know, the city has tried, at least on a couple of occasions, I think, to go with the grant writer model. And to Alder Grant's point, it's the lack of specialization, which
Yep.
sometimes hinders that role a little bit. I mean, I think grant administration has a greater opportunity to be centralized, but you still need, when you're writing
Yes.
for grants, you need that expertise. So I think there could be a way to figure it out, but that's the biggest complication.
Right, and I understand. I mean, look, if you're gonna talk about breathing apparatuses for the fire department, I wouldn't know anything about that other than you hope it works, right? So, the fire department's got guys that's their backyard, and that's what they do. But if they don't have to do the writing and everything else, they can just give the information to the grant writer. It saves everybody a lot of time. So, yeah, I'm willing to, you know, Eric, we can get together maybe this coming Monday or something, you know, before we meet on Tuesday.
Yeah.
I'm just
Spend a couple minutes
impressed
on
that
it.
Alder Grant gets her own administration. I mean, that's
Yeah.
Grant administration. Come on, you gotta be some room here.
Just bad Alder Scannell.
To be honest, that stood out for me too.
All right, well, any other questions? I'll entertain
Motion to
a
refer staff?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Letter F, informational, number 1, 2024 contingency account is at $238,788. Number 2, the next finance committee meeting will be held on September 10th, 2024 at 4:30.
Move to adjourn?
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
All right?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.
I thought that joke was gold.
Yeah.
I think I got like one laugh in the whole